everyone, it's Katrina. Have you ever wondered who lived in Rome before the Romans? Who built the cities that the Aztec would discover abandoned? And whose ruins are at the bottom of the ocean? Today we'll be exploring the lost civilizations that left behind only whispers of their existence. So hit that subscribe button and let me know what theories you have at the end of the video. The secrets of Ail Castle. Lost in the mists of time, this ancient Assyrian castle stands as a silent sentinel overlooking a valley in Turkey. Its origins are shrouded in mystery, and it has baffled historians and archaeologists for centuries. Nobody can figure out who built Ail Castle or when. Some experts are saying it's an ancient ruin left behind by the Assyrian civilization an estimated 5,000 years ago. Other researchers think it's even older, dating the castle foundations to as early as 8,000 BC. That was during the Ice Age. Ail Castle is a place surrounded by ancient legends. It's said to be the resting place of two prophets from the Quran, Du al-Kifl and Elisha, who were laid to rest within the ancient walls. Under the castle, there is an ancient labyrinth of tunnels, which may have been carved by the Assyrians or the civilization that predated them. The fact it's in such a remote area has prevented archaeologists from being able to do any significant excavations. Local historians consider Ail Castle to be the most important castle in the region's history, but with no real excavations. The fortress remains a mystery. There are empty tombs here, likely belonging to the lost kings of Ail, though nobody knows who those kings were. Unfortunately, the graves have been pillaged and the treasures stolen over the years, so there is no way of knowing what was here. Over the centuries, Ail has been associated with the Armenian kingdom of Sofin, the powerful city of Karga-Theoserta, and the religious center of Angegtun. Its history is a tangled web, and this castle must have seen a lot. It's incredible the castle is still standing. The castle also happens to contain natural caves and caverns carved directly out of the stone. This was done way before the Armenians, Assyrians, or the Romans showed up, suggesting that this place is truly ancient. Somehow it has withstood the test of time, but its secrets are well kept, and we aren't likely to find out anything soon. America's pre-flood Sunken City. Beneath the murky depths of the Gulf of Mexico, there is a tantalizing secret. According to amateur archaeologist George Gill, a vast ancient city predating even the Maya and the Aztec lies submerged off the coast of New Orleans. Gill's theory is rooted in a series of intriguing discoveries. Fishermen have long reported hauling up strange, square granite blocks in their nets, a material not native to the region. These blocks, he believes, are remnants of a once thriving civilization that sank beneath the waves at the end of the Ice Age. They may be architectural artifacts from a city 12,000 years old. George Gill has visited the site dozens of times. He is convinced that New Orleans has a sunken neighbor that predates the Maya, the Aztec, and every other civilization of the Americas. George has some pretty wild ideas, many of which mainstream scientists don't share. He claims that down in the Granite City is a monumental pyramid that is connected to the pyramids at Giza. He even gave it a name, Crescentus. But that's not all. Gill suggests the pyramid emits a powerful electromagnetic field, disrupting electronic equipment and compasses. Local shrimper Ricky Robin confirmed that the instruments on his boat stop working when he sails directly above the pyramid. Ricky said it's like being in the Bermuda Triangle. All of his electronics fail and compasses go haywire. The huge underwater triangle isn't the only structure off the coast of New Orleans. George claims there are hundreds of buildings at the bottom of the ocean, most of them buried under sand and silt. These ruins are so extensive that George thinks it took 1 billion stones or more to build them all. So what is everyone else saying? The theory of a lost city is rooted in reality. Fishermen have indeed been pulling up strange square blocks in their fishing nets for years, especially around the Chandeleur Islands area. The square blocks are an enigma in themselves because of the fact that there shouldn't be any granite off the coasts of Louisiana or Mississippi. It's not a material found naturally in either state. So why is there so much of it right off the coast? And why are the chunks of granite carved into building blocks? A study from Texas A&M University proposed that the granite blocks might simply be debris from Spanish shipwrecks. So, what do you believe? Is there a lost city beneath the Gulf, or is it just debris from shipwrecks? Let me know what you think. Who built Teotihuacan? The biggest mystery in all of Mexico is a city known as the City of the Gods. Teotihuacan stands as a testament to a lost civilization, but despite its immense size and architectural marvels, its origins remain elusive. When the Aztecs arrived in this part of Mexico, this enormous city was already there. It had been abandoned by a civilization that had left behind monumental structures so impressive they rival those of ancient Egypt. It seems impossible that a civilization built a city of this magnitude and then vanished without a trace. Its stepped pyramids rise hundreds of feet above the Valley of Mexico. Teotihuacan's scale is far larger than anything ever built by the Maya. Not even the Inca Empire ever built a city that could challenge the glory of Teotihuacan. Archaeologists have determined that Teotihuacan thrived between the 1st and 7th centuries AD, but the precise date of when it was founded remains a mystery. This city was a bustling metropolis, home to over 100,000 people. A complex irrigation system ensured a reliable food supply, and grand temples served as centers of religious and ceremonial activities. Teotihuacan's influence extended far beyond its borders, as evidenced by its diplomatic relations with the Maya Empire. Maya murals found in Teotihuacan suggest cultural interaction. Researchers think Teotihuacan was multicultural, with people from all over the Americas living in it. However, around the 7th century AD, Teotihuacan was mysteriously abandoned. The city was left deserted, its once vibrant streets falling silent. The people didn't leave any indication of where they went. One second they were there, the next they were history. When the Aztec found the city abandoned hundreds of years later, they didn't know what to think. The Aztecs thought the city had been either built by giants or gods. The Aztec took over the ruins and used the pyramids that were already built as their own. But that still doesn't solve the mystery of who the original builders were and how they built this extraordinary city. And why did they abandon it so abruptly? The answers to these questions may forever remain hidden within the ancient stones of Teotihuacan. And now for a quick break because it's shoutout time! I want to give a big thank you to Joshua and Dijal Ways for supporting this channel. Thanks guys! Good morning and hope you all have a great day. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos like this. Who made the Herakut Face? Deep within the heart of the Peruvian Amazon, a mysterious figure watches over the jungle. Carved into the side of a cliff, the Herakut Face is a colossal human face that has baffled explorers and archaeologists for generations. Nobody knows who put it there. Was it the work of a native tribe, or perhaps a forgotten civilization that inhabited the Amazon thousands of years ago? The reason it's called the Herakut Face is that it's revered as a sacred symbol by the Herakut tribe. The Herakut have inhabited this region of the jungle for countless generations. Though officially recognized as a communal reserve only in 2002, their deep-rooted connection to the land is undeniable. Sadly, they and their lands are under constant threat from poachers, illegal fishermen, and illegal timber harvesters. There are also those who enter the jungle strictly to plunder artifacts, build illegal infrastructure, and try to mine for gold and make anyone disappear who gets in their way. And that especially includes indigenous people. Today, there are only an estimated 5,000 Herakut left. They are one of the oldest tribes in the Mother of God region of the jungle and could be gone in another couple of generations. But who came before them? The Herakut have been around for at least a couple thousand years. Their legends speak of people who were around even earlier. One of their traditional myths tells of a warrior race destined to protect the jungle from outsiders. The Herakut face may have been modeled after one of those very warriors. If the Herakut legends are true, there are other faces like it spread over their territories. However, the faces were carved so long ago that they've been swallowed by the jungle. They are everywhere, but you can't see them. Even the Herakut's ancestors didn't know who carved the faces. The Herakut Face stands as a testament to the enduring spirit of the Amazon rainforest and its indigenous people. As the world continues to change, the mystery of the Herakut Face remains a reminder of the ancient secrets that lie hidden in the jungle. Who do you think the Herakut Face is supposed to represent? The lost civilization of the desert. There is a huge city somewhere in the Kalahari Desert that was built by a civilization that could change history, if only somebody could find it. People have been looking for the lost city of the Kalahari for more than a century. Even though it's supposed to be gigantic, with amazing towers of spiraling stone reaching to the heavens, it's still like trying to find a needle in a haystack. The Kalahari Desert is in southern Africa, stretching for a staggering 350,000 square miles. It covers huge parts of South Africa, Namibia, and Botswana. If there is a city here, it's probably very, very old. Old as in before the flood, before the Ice Age old. The legend of the lost city began in the 19th century when Canadian explorer Guillermo Farini stumbled upon mysterious ruins during an expedition. When he got back home, he published a book about his experiences. In his book, Farini describes stumbling upon an ancient ruin. He described weathered stones of unknown buildings, suggesting the presence of an ancient civilization. Farini was so convinced that the towers and walls he found in the desert were a lost city that he presented a scientific paper to the Royal Geographical Society. In his paper, he described the city as a half-buried ruin, a huge rack of stones on a lone and desolate spot, a temple or a tomb for human bones left by men to decay and rot. Farini was nothing if not dramatic. Farini's claims sparked widespread interest, and several scientific expeditions were launched to find the city. By 1932, scientific expeditions were delving deep into the desert. 5 expeditions were launched to find the lost city, but despite their efforts, these expeditions returned empty-handed, unable to locate the ruins he had described. But Farini wasn't the only one to report the city's existence. Dr. Gustav Prelude, a historian of some renown, came across a band of local Khoikhoi during one of his expeditions in the Kalahari. The local Khoikhoi tribes also recounted tales of ancient ruins revealed during a severe drought. The ruins were similar to other megalithic stones that had been found in the past. These stories suggest the knowledge of this lost city may have been preserved within oral traditions. Although the outside world was skeptical, apparently the locals were well informed that someone had built cities in the Kalahari long before it was ever a desert. So, is the lost city of the Kalahari a myth? Or does a forgotten civilization truly lie hidden beneath the desert sands? London is way older than we thought. A groundbreaking archaeological discovery at the edge of London is changing history as we know it. Researchers unearthed a prehistoric ceremonial site that could push the age of London way back. So far back that England's capital might be 3,000 years older than previously thought. We might never learn who built London first. It definitely wasn't the British. It wasn't the Anglo-Saxons either, and it wasn't even the Romans. For centuries, we believed that London's history began with the Romans, who established Londinium around 47 AD. However, this new evidence suggests that the city was already a thriving settlement long before the Romans arrived. Now its existence is being pushed back an extra 37 centuries, and it's all thanks to some cooking pots and utensils. John Cotton is a prehistorian who was involved in the recent excavation. His team discovered pots that were used for processing milk and others used for making meat stew. More than 400 fragments were discovered in what researchers think is an ancient garbage dump. Ancient garbage dumps are treasure troves for historians. How does the garbage dump get lost for 5,000 years? Because it was buried, and then the city of London grew and grew. The ancient garbage dump just kept getting buried deeper and deeper. What scientists want to know is who was throwing their trash in the garbage heap. This mysterious group likely used London as a ceremonial site between 6,000 and 5,000 years ago. But nobody knows if they had houses in London, if they built a settlement, or just how advanced they were. London's history is so deep that archaeologists can't figure out where it begins. For all they know, London's roots go even deeper than this Stone Age garbage heap. The question remains, Where does London's story truly begin? The Hill People of Ancient India. Two hikers wandered into the hills of India's Konkan coast, eager to explore the vast wilderness. Instead, they stumbled upon a discovery that would rewrite history and change their lives. They found evidence of an unknown civilization. Hidden beneath the layers of time, they uncovered hundreds of ancient rock carvings dating back a staggering 12,000 years. India may have been home to a kingdom that predates all others in the known world. The hikers found ancient petroglyphs of crocodiles, elephants, and human figures from 10,000 BC. The people who created these petroglyphs remain a mystery, but their existence challenges our understanding of India's ancient past. The Indian petroglyphs are pretty similar to ones that have been found in places like the American Southwest and Europe, only these were hidden underneath soil and mud. They were only exposed by peeling away the top layer of dirt, like peeling away a bandage. Before the hikers began uncovering the petroglyphs, there were only 3 known sites in the region. Now, there are more than 200 petroglyphs spread across 17 sites. But there is still no other evidence of cities, agricultural activities, tombs, pyramids, temples, nothing of the sort. There isn't anything in those hills to prove a civilization was once here. The only evidence of the ancient people is their petroglyphs. They left nothing behind except for artwork. It begs the question, were they even a civilization? Or were the artists nomadic hunter-gatherers passing through the hills? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. The Greatest Migration. Scientists in China recently discovered a civilization nobody knew existed until now. They found it on an island in the middle of the sea named Pingtan. The nameless civilization dates back to around 7,500 years ago. The implications of this discovery are monumental. Chinese scientists believe this civilization could have been responsible for one of the largest maritime migrations in human history. You might be a descendant of these people and not even know it. The location is Pingtan Island, off the coast of Fujian Province in southeastern China. Researchers found evidence that the island was home to a group of Austronesians from 7,500 until 3,000 years ago. The Austronesians are a strange piece in the puzzle of human history. Most scholars think they originated from the island of Taiwan. They left Taiwan in boats, traveling as far as Easter Island in Chile. They managed to populate Hawaii, New Zealand, Southeast Asia, Polynesia, and Micronesia. People from one island took over most of the Pacific Ocean. Today, about 400 million people are the descendants of early Austronesian tribes. One of those people could be you, or even me. The only way to know for sure is to get a DNA test done and trace your ancestry. Things are starting to shake up, though. Until now, scientists assumed the Great Migration event began in Taiwan 5,000 years ago due to uncontrolled population growth. The island was too small and there were too many people, so they had to strike out for new lands. That may not be what happened. The mystery civilization on Pingtan Island is even older. They may have started their migration across the Pacific 2,500 years before it began in Taiwan. A new mega-civilization. The unimaginable has happened. A civilization from the Bronze Age has been discovered in Europe. The scope of this civilization is far beyond anything else I've talked about in today's video. I know I use the words huge, gigantic, and massive pretty frequently, but I can't use those words here. What scientists found in Europe isn't just massive or huge or gigantic. The ruins of the Bronze Age megaforts are world-shatteringly colossal. New satellite and aerial images have revealed a network of megaforts connected to more than 100 large sites across Central Europe. The megaforts are like ancient cities, with long highways and interstates linking them to farms, ceremonial sites, smaller villages, and quarries. Scientists are saying the megaforts were the biggest structures in the world before the Iron Age, bigger than anything in Mesopotamia, Mesoamerica, or Egypt. Europe may have been the true cradle for advanced human society. Try to wrap your mind around this. Some of the largest megaforts, places like Gradiseiros and Santana, were encircled by more than 20 miles of ditches. Ditches so big, they make castle moats seem like plastic kiddie pools you put in the backyard. Each megafort was protected by a seemingly impenetrable border of ditches and likely a lot of sharpened stakes. The megaforts are spread across the Carpathian Basin of Central and Southeast Europe. Most of the newly discovered forts were found along the Tisza River, each one within 50 miles of another. Having cities that close together allowed people to travel vast distances safely. They could ride their wagons all day and have a secure place to rest come nightfall. You're probably dying to know some dates. These sites were established around 1600 BC. Over the following 400 years, a mighty and prosperous civilization rose in Central Europe. Sadly, archaeologists know nothing about the civilization's government, religion, war habits, or culture. They can only guess these things based on the archaeological evidence. For example, the close proximity of the megafortresses shows that this wasn't a region with multiple kingdoms fighting for dominance. Central Europe was controlled by a single cooperative community, or what you might call an empire. This was at the same time the Hittites, Mycenaeans, and Egyptians were all at the top of the global power ladder. But if those three names are so famous today, why is this European kingdom left out of the history books? Satellite images have shown they were clearly expanding. Their cities were growing larger, their population was booming, and there were innovations and some warfare. Then it all came to a halt. Abruptly, around 1200 BC, this whole European civilization collapsed. Scientists don't have the foggiest clue as to what happened. Before this new study and the new aerial images, archaeologists were aware of a societal collapse 3,200 years ago. They thought perhaps there had been a climate disaster that led to a diminishing population. Large settlements fell into ruin because there weren't enough people to maintain them. The new aerial images prove that this was not the case. Something else happened. Something bad. It was bad enough that within a few years, the megaforts were deserted. The villages were abandoned, the farms weren't producing anymore. Whatever this empire may have called itself, it was destroyed. This could be the biggest historical mystery in Europe, so I'll be sure to bring you more news as the story develops. Right now, scientists are thinking that Europeans might all be connected by this ancient empire, much in the same way Egyptians are connected by their ancient heritage, or the surviving Maya. What do you think about all this? Let me know in the comments. Italy's forgotten walls. All across Italy are examples of seemingly impossible and humongous walls that might not be connected to the Romans. It's easy to attribute everything in Italy to the Romans. They were some of the best builders the world has ever seen. But sometimes you need to think a little outside the box and look harder at the clues. These walls are an example of megalithic Cyclopean masonry. It's very much like something the Romans would have built, but there are one too many discrepancies. The walls might be the ruins of a civilization just as advanced as Rome, only much older. You can find examples of this incredible architecture in Lazio, Abruzzo, Campania, Umbria, Tuscany, and Molise. The walls were made using huge stone blocks stacked one on the other, just like an ordinary brick wall. Only these blocks are huge, and they weren't stuck together with mortar. They were fitted so perfectly and so impressively that no kind of adhesive was necessary. You might remember some videos I've done before about how impressive ancient Roman concrete was. Many engineers believe that Roman concrete was better than anything being used right now in the modern world. Since they had access to such a useful material, they likely would have used it as mortar to build such big walls, right? And another thing, why do these Cyclopean structures appear in places like Lazio, but not in Rome? There are hundreds of examples of this very specific type of masonry. It can be seen in hilltop fortifications, agricultural terraces, ancient aqueducts, the list goes on. What's also interesting is that the unusual stonework is at the bottom, usually making up the foundations of a building or other structure. Then, as you look up the structure, the brickwork typically becomes more Roman. I bet you know what I'm getting at by now. The Romans appear to have built on top of foundations laid by totally different people. It was like the Romans picked up a book someone started to write and then finished it off with their own story. They built over the bones of a different culture. Before you ask, the different culture in this situation wasn't the Etruscans. They were even more ancient. Italy is really mysterious when you start digging into its truly ancient past. You may be familiar with the megaliths of Europe, Stonehenge, the ancient temples of Malta, the massive dolmens in Ireland, the menhirs of Scandinavia, and other massive building projects in Iberia and Sardinia. But you don't really see that type of work in Italy. There have been a handful of dolmens reported, but nothing that even comes close to what was built in Malta. It's almost as if Italy's history didn't start until the Roman Republic came into the picture. But that can't possibly be true. So where is all the proof of ancient Italy? Did the Romans bury it? Did they build their empire upon the ruins of a culture modern historians didn't even know about? Here's an example of the stonework I'm talking about, thanks to Laura Tabone. The image is of the Porta Sole at Palestrina, Italy. Everything in the picture looks normal except for the cyclopean wall at the bottom that was built from polygons. The contrast between this primitive-looking wall and the quadrangular stonework of the Romans right next to it is impossible to ignore. High up in the city is another example. The sanctuary of Fortuna Primigenia has Roman architecture, but at the bottom of the enormous complex is a megalithic foundation that doesn't match. It's like somebody tried to put two completely different puzzles together. Here's one more example. The picture also thanks to Laura Tabone. This is an aqueduct between Sora and Ferentino. The upper portion is distinctly Roman, but you can clearly see that it was built on the base of something different. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. The Sunken Kingdom. 9,500 years ago, a majestic city stood proudly on the coast of India. Then it sank, and nobody saw it again until now. Scientists are trying to figure out how this city exists and who built it. There is a lot of confusion surrounding the Sunken Kingdom of India. It was initially discovered by marine archaeologists in the Gulf of Cabi using sonar scanning technology. By sending beams of sound waves to the bottom of the ocean, scientists can create a three-dimensional map of what's down there. What the scientists picked up on their radar was almost too crazy to believe. There were shapes that looked suspiciously like buildings. Palaces, houses, temples, everything you can imagine. There are huge geometrical structures in the Gulf of Cabi. It looks like a ruined city, more than 5 miles long and 2 miles wide. It's amazing, but it gets even more amazing. When archaeologists were asked to come up with a date for the city, they shocked the world. The ruins at the bottom of the sea could predate the oldest known ruins on land in India by 5,000 years. This was too much for the mainstream scientific community to handle. Once the theory of the city being 9,500 years old started to circulate, scientists stopped investigating. Then came Graham Hancock, legendary fringe researcher and a man who's been called a pseudoscientist more times than I can count. According to Graham, the city off the coast of India was built by a civilization before the Ice Age. This was a civilization that had incredible technology and a rich cultural history. But when the Ice Age came to an end, their world flooded. The whole world flooded. Global sea levels rose 400 feet, and the best coastal lands across the planet were swallowed up. The great civilizations of Earth had been living on those coastal lands and were washed away. Many of the most important cities in the world are now in places that could be underwater in the next century. It wasn't that much different 9,500 years ago. Do you believe in civilization before the flood? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to stay tuned for extra content you might have missed.
The Egyptian cult of Isis. The ancient Egyptians positively loved the goddess Isis. She was the divine protector of the dead, the wife of Osiris, and the mother of Horus. She was worshipped by cultists for over 2,000 years before her influence spread beyond the Nile and perforated the Roman Empire. The cult of Isis was such a big deal that they constructed a temple in London, back when it was called Londinium, in the 1st century AD. The goddess is said to have been born from the primordial gods of earth and sky, Geb and Nut. She married her brother Osiris, who was then murdered by their jealous brother Set. Set chopped Osiris into pieces and scattered him across the world. However, Isis found his pieces, put him back together, and he is revived as Lord of the Dead. It's because of her origin story that Isis became the goddess of resurrection, which became one of the most important facets in Egyptian society. The oldest mention of Isis comes from an inscription on the wall of a tomb in Saqqara from around 4,500 years ago. She was worshipped locally by her own death cult and revered by the priests who mummified people. Mummification was all about resurrection, which was something that Isis had mastered. It wasn't until Alexander the Great conquered Egypt in 332 BC that her cult expanded beyond the Egyptian border. She became popular in Greece, and cultic death temples sprang up in places like Israel and as far away as Britain. The skull cult. Archaeologists in England have recently revealed a primitive skull cult from 15,000 years ago. It's now become disturbingly clear that Paleolithic humans were involved in cannibalistic rituals for unknown purposes. Archaeologists have known for a long time that the prehistoric humans of England practiced cannibalism, but this newest discovery has pushed things to the extreme. It seems that after members of this mysterious cult skinned a victim's dead body, they consumed their meat, inscribed strange symbols on their bones, and then sucked out the marrow. They also apparently turned the skulls into cups like creepy dishware. The new evidence for this terrifying ritual comes from Gow's Cave in Somerset. Archaeologists found human bones with cuts and tooth marks, indicating they had been munched on like cobs of corn. The researchers also found skulls that had been modified to be used as dishware, and it was most likely for ritualistic purposes. Sylvia Bello from the Natural History Museum in the UK says the prehistoric cultists had been aware of what they were doing. Sylvia says the victim was partially eaten until bone was exposed. Then the eating paused while symbols were sketched onto the bone. However, the group didn't keep the bones with the inscriptions on them. Instead, they finished their meal and threw the bones away. Researchers can't figure out why they did this or what the ritualistic purpose of the cannibalism was. The only theory right now is that the cult may have been feasting on their dead friends as a way to transfer knowledge. They may have believed that by eating meat of dead loved ones and scrawling symbols on their bones, they would absorb their knowledge and power. The Vikings and Valhalla. In Viking mythology, when a warrior died in battle, they would be ushered into a glorious afterlife by a female figure called a Valkyrie. The Vikings genuinely believed the only way to die was in battle. If a man didn't die with a sword in his hand, he wouldn't be welcomed into Valhalla, Odin's great hall of warriors. Valhalla was a warrior's paradise, a great drinking hall built of spears and shields, and filled with as many beautiful maidens as a man could desire. The belief in Valhalla was like a warrior cult. According to Tom Shippey, an expert in ancient Vikings, it was likely their fanatical belief in Valhalla that gave them such success in battle. Tom describes the Viking mindset as a death cult, a psychological phenomenon that made the Vikings absolutely fearless. Unlike other warriors who were afraid to die, Vikings welcomed death with open arms. To them, death was only the beginning of what would be a tremendous life. However, Valhalla was not the end. The Vikings believed that Ragnarok was coming, and it was inevitable. Ragnarok would be the end of everything, and a great battle at the end of the world. Those brave warriors who had died on Earth would have another chance to fight, this time side by side with the gods at Ragnarok. This in itself was motivation to pick up a sword and fight at every given chance. The Cult of Dionysis. In ancient Greece, there were so many cults it would take hours to talk about them all. Greeks loved being involved in these groups, although their cult activity was a little different than what you might be thinking. These people weren't drinking poison fruit punch. They were celebrating gods and myths while drinking a lot of wine. In fact, the Cult of Dionysus was one of the preferred cults in ancient Greece due to its encouragement of copious wine drinking. Dionysus was the god of wine, fertility, and religious ecstasy. He had two festivals held in his honor, the Dionysia and the Linnea. The festivals usually included lots of drinking and lots of revelry and partying. These celebrations mostly focused on discarding a person's inhibitions and getting closer to nature by embracing physical pleasures. It's easy to see why so many Greeks took a shine to their favorite god. The Cult of Dionysus worshipped their god through a ritual known as the Dionysian Mysteries. The ritual involved consuming not only copious amounts of wine, but also substances that could induce a trance, like hallucinogenic drugs. During this ritual, people became extremely intoxicated, danced and played music, and chugged alcohol out of bullhorns. The cultists believed that the intoxication felt from consuming these mind-altering substances was caused by Dionysus' spirit. In their minds, the god spirit entered their bodies, got them drunk, and helped them to shed their stuffy human morals. The Egyptian cat cult. One of the most popular cults in ancient Egypt worshipped a cat, or rather a feline goddess named Bastet. In the ancient city of Bubastis, a great cult was formed to give praise to Bastet, who was seen in countless images and statues from ancient Egypt as a woman with the head of a lion. She was a true lioness, and it was her cult temple in Bubastis that formed the focal point of the city. The famous Greek historian Herodotus visited the place in the 5th century BC and described it as magnificent. He even witnessed the festival of Bastet and said it was the most elaborate of any religious festival in Egypt. There were massive crowds, with everyone participating in rampant drinking, dancing, and general fun. The cult of Bastet was to the Egyptians what the cult of Dionysus was to the Greeks. It was an excuse to party, get wild, and drink until they got sick. Baal. Throughout the history of the ancient Near East, Baal has been the name applied to multiple different deities. He is the antagonist of the Israelite cult of Yahweh, and he was worshipped as far back as the Akkadian Empire. His name is at least 3,400 years old, and he was king of the gods in the ancient city of Ugarit in modern-day Syria. The original story of Baal involved him dying, descending into the underworld, and returning to life to be the king of the gods. Many scholars believe his story was the very first in a string of death and revival mythologies that came after it, including the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Baal is best known for his role in the Bible in the story of the Phoenician princess Jezebel. The story takes place around 842 BC, with Jezebel encouraging the worship of Baal. She was part of the cult of Baal and married the Israelite king Ahab, who also worshipped Baal instead of Yahweh, the Israelite god. In the end, Jezebel was murdered. The prophet Elijah declared Yahweh the one and only God, and the Baal cultists were executed, and their temples were destroyed. Even though this is a biblical story, it has a solid base in reality, as the 9th century BC was a pivotal point for world religion. The Israelites believed in the one true God, Yahweh, while much of the world was still worshipping a wide number of gods and participating in cults. The Canaanites worshipped Baal, who had already been around for thousands of years, but he was slowly and surely replaced by the new cult of Yahweh. Baal, like so many of the old gods, was eventually cast aside. He would later become the figure Beelzebub in the New Testament and be linked to the Christian devil. Cult of Artemis. The coastal city of Brauron in Greece was settled around the year 3500 BC. It remained a small and peaceful settlement up until the 8th century BC, when Athens was formed. Around this time, the great ruler Theseus unified the 12 settlements of Attica to form what became the greatest city of the Mediterranean. The town of Brauron was no longer a town, but a district. It morphed into a religious site, the most important place in the ancient world for the cult worship of the goddess Artemis. The cult of Artemis was unique because it was primarily occupied by women. Artemis was goddess of the hunt, the wilderness, the moon, and chastity. Women flocked to Brauron to join the cult because it was centered around fertility and childbirth, as well as the symbol of a strong female goddess. Around the year 500 BC, a temple was built in the goddess's honor. And shortly after that, the sanctuary of Artemis Brauronia was constructed in the heart of Athens on the Acropolis. The most famous ritual performed by the cult involved a girl's transition into womanhood. Teenage girls would travel to the sanctuary of Artemis from all over the region, and they would undergo an intense ritual overseen by the priestesses. The young girls would wear the skin of a bear and walk 15 miles from the sanctuary in Athens to the original sacred temple in Brauron. The journey was supposed to represent their passage from childhood into womanhood. Sadly, Xerxes and his Persian army destroyed the temple when they invaded in 480 BC. Neolithic Cultists at Avebury. Avebury is a Neolithic monument that is less well known than Stonehenge, but is equally fantastic. It's a huge ceremonial monument that covers over 20 acres and is 1,000 yards in circumference. There were originally 98 standing stones in the outer ring, with 2 more circles of standing stones inside, kind of like a bullseye. It was built about 5,000 years ago, and most likely began with a mysterious cult and a great stone altar. A research team from the University of Leicester recently discovered a hidden stone square at the very center of the monument inside its 3 rings, which they believe was built before any stones were erected. They found that the square was originally encompassed by a mysterious wooden structure that is no longer there. Nobody knows exactly what was built here, only that it was the first piece of the puzzle, and everything else sprouted up around it. Researchers say it may have been a ritual space, a simple shack with a stone altar where a prehistoric cult came to potentially perform sacrifices. The rest of the stone rings came up around it as time went on, and eventually, the structure in the center was lost. The Cult of Cabi. The Cult of Cabi is very mysterious. The Cabi was a group of deities that may have origins in ancient Phrygia. They were worshipped across Macedonia and many parts of Greece. Researchers believe the deities were most likely promoters of fertility, and that they were believed to protect seafarers. In classical Greece, there are 2 main deities in the group, Axiocersus and his son Cadmilus. There were also 2 female deities, Axieris and Axiocersa, though they weren't worshipped quite as frequently. Those who worshipped these deities were part of a mystery cult. These types of cults in classical Greece were fringe religions, dominated by secrets and often referred to as mysteries. These were groups of people who worshipped a god or goddess, or some other strange deities, and held their rites and rituals as closely guarded secrets. For example, the famous Eleusinian Mysteries was one of these religions, one of the most popular in Greece, and yet so secretive we don't even know what the cult did 2,000 years later. The members of the Cabi cult possibly performed fertility rituals and rites of purification. However, like so many of the mystery cults of ancient Greece, nobody knows all the specific details. The cult fell out of favor around 323 BC with the death of Alexander the Great and the fracturing of the Macedonian Empire. Mithraicism was another mystery cult, only this one appeared fairly recently and was popular among Romans. The Mithraic Mysteries, as they were also called, had its followers worshipping a deity from ancient Iran named Mithras. Mithras was the god of friendship, which seemed to resonate with the Roman people. The first Mithraic cults were formed in the 1st century AD, and cult activity spread across the Italian peninsula. The cult eventually seeped across the borders and into the rest of the Roman Empire. Followers of the cult were called votaries, and they frequently worshipped Mithras in caves or any other dark and mysterious place hidden from the public. Researchers believe this wasn't done to evade authorities, but to make members of the cult feel like they were a part of something special. The cult was all about building close connections and belonging to a family. However, something happened with the Mithraic cult that was never seen before. It blew up, and hundreds of temples wound up being built across the Roman Empire. What began as a fringe group of cultists worshipping in caves became popular, and Mithras was soon openly prayed to in huge temples from Britain to Syria. The cult became a major religion, and it would have kept spreading if not for the establishment of Christianity in the 3rd century AD. Christians began destroying temples to Mithras, and most of the followers of the cult either gave up or were converted by the 5th century. Thanks for watching! Which of these mysterious cults did you like the most? Let me know in the comments below, and also let me know if you'd like to see a part 2. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you soon. Bye!